Good morning, guys. Welcome to today's session of Market Snapshot. My name is Samson, and I'll be taking you through what we have for today. So first and foremost, let's get quickly to Australian dollar. So we had some news coming out on CPI. Also, if you can hear me, just say hi on the chats. Let's see. Yeah, I think I'm clear. Yeah. So on CPI, also if you can hear me, just okay. So I was just confirming that I'm clear. Okay, so we had news coming out. Let's see. Very early in the morning. So I don't know who usually manages to trade these early morning risers. Hi guys. Yeah, hi Steve, Sue, Charles. Okay. I think then I'm audible enough. So yeah, so there was news at 4:30 was it today? No, this isn't today. Was there news? Just a minute. Okay. Yeah, so the news is tomorrow. Today we have a very quiet day. So the news is coming out tomorrow. So we'll look at that in a minute. And we're going to be looking at Australian dollar, and then we go to the euro and all the euro currencies. And then from there we look at earnings. I remembered yesterday, I didn't have time, but we had a question on earnings. So we'll talk a bit about that. And then we go to what the market is thinking about the Fed, because the Fed is usually the main agenda when it comes to trading, or the US dollar, that is. So to start us off, so we have a consumer confidence meeting. Again, if you think this is really important, you just need to look at the previous announcements. This one doesn't have, but look at the previous announcements from Google, and then from there you see if it had an impact in the market. If it didn't, then there's no point in basing your entire day off of this single announcement here. But consumer confidence index will just show you the level or the level or the state of the economy in terms of what do households think, and it's usually a very good guide to how people feel the economy is going at the moment. Although the US usually needs more concrete data for decisions in terms of what is going to happen to inflation and where the economy is going in terms of growth. So you won't look too much into this. We'll go straight to CPI, and then we'll come back to what we think about the US economy. So if you talk about CPI, this is going to be tomorrow at 4:30. Again, an easy way to try and manage this or try and look for setups around here is go to each of these dates here. So if for Forex Factory, if I right click like this and say, if I click on this, it will take me to the exact day. And from there, I can see the exact time the announcement was made. So usually there's a method called news recording where you can record the deviations between the forecasts and the actual. And then on the chart, you see how many pips or how many points the markets moved based on that deviation. Then you can get an average movement per deviation, and that gives you a rough idea of what to expect. For example, if we had if the deviation was positive or if it was negative, they usually have different reactions. So for example, if we had 1.4 coming up, then you know on average how many pips you expect that to be in the market. I'm saying on average because you'll need to have at least a few data points before you can have a good estimate of what's the deviation between the forecasts and the actual translating in the market. So let's talk a bit about Australia, because I think this might be a key news item for AUD. First off, let's look at the chart and then we'll come back to what you think. So when you go to the chart, So on the chart, we have, on the daily, we have this channel. So when I was plotting it, it was, I think it's finally gotten to the lower point of the channel. So we can have a clearer view on H4. Okay, so at the moment we had this channel and it seems like there's bias towards the lower end. It seems like there's bias towards the lower end of the channel, and that can be explained also in terms of our fundamentals. But for now, if at all we are to be heading lower, then we should expect a break in this channel. We know that there is a level here of a support. So this might be the next target. But usually when the market is breaking a channel, you might have maybe, so let me just put this. You usually have breaks first and then it retests, or it does some move back to balance the market before we head. So if fundamentals support the bias lower, then there might be selling opportunities after we've started seeing a reversal at this point. So the current sentiment of the market is definitely bearish, but we'll talk about that. But of course, if there is a bullish case, then we'll also see what scenario that is going to be. So let's go to H1. Okay, yeah. So there's definitely, so this happened within the last hour when I was drawing this. So there's definitely a lot of bearish momentum in the market. One thing to note is what's the potential movement with AUD USD in terms of pips per day. So you can just go, because this is the 1 hour chart and these are period separators, then you can know on average what AUD USD is capable of. And if we have such a long range like the one over here, then it is possible to have a move down. The reason I'm saying that is, for example, like for gold, if you look at the past 1 month, most of the times it stays within the 450 pips a day, 500 pips a day range. So if it overextends, then usually there's some opportunities to for it to contract back within the daily range. But having said that, let's look at the fundamentals. So these are the technicals. If we still remain bearish, then we might think about filling this imbalance first before we head lower, or look for a discount in the selling price before heading lower. Alternatively, for a bullish scenario, you need to wait for it to break, obviously, this high before you can conclude that you might probably still start looking for bullish setups. So when it comes to the news and what is happening, yeah. So when it comes to the news, there's an interesting article here describing what is happening with Australia at the moment. So I won't read everything, I'll just summarize it. So first off, we're expecting inflation to be down. However, the Bank of Australia had also stated that they're going to have a pause. So the RBA, Reserve Bank of Australia, is going to pause. Yeah. At the moment, the market is pricing in a hold rather than a pause. That means they're going to, instead of, because a pause usually means they might start increasing again in case of the data coming in worse off. So in this case, the market is already pricing in a hold. And that's why when you look at the chart, you can see that, yeah, so when you look at the chart, you can see that there is general weakness in Australian dollar. So this might be the case way up to tomorrow's announcement. If we have an upside surprise, that is, if we have inflation, because the market is pricing in low inflation and a pause in a hold in RBA's hikes, if we have an upside surprise, that is, if inflation came in outside this range, maybe 6.7 or something like that, then we might have an immediate repricing, and that's when you're going to expect a really large correction. So let's look at that again. So a large correction will mean us coming back into this range from the H4. So we are in this, in this channel. So we're in this channel. If the market, say, goes lower and tomorrow we have an upside surprise, then we know that the market might start pricing in a pause again instead of a hold, because a hold is a complete stop in hiking, while a pause is temporary depending on the data. So in this case, that's one thing to watch out for. Next, let's move to euro currencies and try and explain what is going on there. So just a minute. Okay. So if you look at either Euro USD or Pound USD, you'll notice that they have gained significantly against the dollar yesterday. And this was a zone we were targeting initially, saying that if you run into, because this withdrew yesterday, if you run into this zone, then we'll be looking to sell from here. However, the sentiment in the market is not at the moment, you're not favoring any bearish scenario fundamentally. Although technicals, this looks like a good supply zone to sell either to this point or back here. If you look at the fundamentals, it says the contrary. So let's look at that. So if you just go through this, we know a couple of things with the US and these other countries. We know that inflation in the US has been coming down. And in the Eurozone and in UK, it's sort of still very high. So that can tell you one thing, that the Fed might start correcting earlier than these other central banks. And that means we might start seeing in future lower rates. So let me just zoom in here. So yeah, so we do know that we expect 25 basis points hike next week. However, it seems as though now the Fed has more room to pause and relax, while the Euro and the UK, they're still trying to battle inflation. And that means their hikes or their rates might remain higher for longer than in the US. And that's what the market is starting to believe, meaning that we're starting to see people thinking that the Euro and the pound are going to be stronger, while the dollar might start cooling off. Although it's not the case. Okay, so the link of the document, I don't know if I can share it in the charts. Let's see. So yeah, so there's that divergence between what the Fed is doing and what other central banks are doing. Let's see. Yeah, it can share. Okay. Yeah, so there's that divergence between what the Fed is doing and what other central banks are doing. And that is going to be more prominent in the coming months. Having said that, that's why we have an uptrend in both the euro and the pound recently. So now it's going to be your technicals versus your fundamentals. If your technicals and fundamentals align, you have even higher probability setups. In that case, in as much as this looks like a good sell, I'll be looking to see buying opportunities back up to the top of this channel over here. So if at all we see the price first filling this bullish trend and then coming back to this demand zone, then probably that might be a potential area to look for buys. Alternatively, if we go lower, then we have to wait for more news or more clarity on what is happening in the markets. But for now, it seems very bullish, and it's prudent to look for setups or opportunities where someone can get in and look for buy setups. But that's, again, you have to use your strategy, and all those things have to come into play. Okay, but at the moment, let's see how it goes. And then same thing. So it's going to be the same thing with a pound. I'm not going to include the two, but it's still the same thing. Next, we have earnings. So let's talk about earnings for a minute. Okay. Okay, so if you look at the chart for earnings, we have different sectors, obviously, but we also have this week a lot of tech companies are announcing the earnings this week. So let me see if I have that calendar. So I know you have Microsoft, yeah, 25th. Okay, so these are the list of companies with the earnings reports. So how does this tie into trading? You can either opt to do individual stock trading, or you can trade them as a sector. So if you're expecting tech companies this week, then our focus is going to be on the NASDAQ, and we have Google later today. Our focus is going to be on the NASDAQ and maybe US 500, but not as much. And then you're also going to see how the tech sector is comparing with other sectors like the traditional industrials. And that means you're going to see if there's any divergence between how the NASDAQ is trending or moving and how US 30 is moving, because US 30 comprises of much older companies, well, more established industries, for more established industries, while NASDAQ is mainly tech stocks. So we have BYD, what else? Okay. So I think I'll need to get a more summarized version of this. Okay, so now that we have expectations, this explains why over the past few weeks we've been saying the trend isn't quite as strong, because let's see. So just a minute. Yeah, so we have Microsoft, yeah. Microsoft, Alphabet, and yeah. So it's saying yesterday Dow fell this point, and if it can, yeah. So Dow was up, S&P was up, NASDAQ fell. That's because the focus today is the tech industry, and we might want to see if the earnings are steady and if there's improvement in conditions, and they're actually able to be resilient against the high interest rate environment. So that means we might see a bit of deviation between NASDAQ and the Dow, but let's look at those charts at the moment. So depending on how these earnings come in today and tomorrow, I think that the whole of this week, it's going to determine whether we're going to break above this trend, because it's already certain that the Fed might slow down depending on the data. So now the thing is, the company is doing well, and that's going to dictate the direction of your index, the indices. So let's start with NASDAQ. Remember I've drawn the charts again because the older charts we had drawn, you can go from yesterday's videos and you can just reference the levels from there. So just want to make a few things clear first. First, if you compare the daily chart of NASDAQ and the daily chart of US 30, so this is US 30, you can see that this uptrend here, this uptrend was more pronounced and was more obvious than this uptrend here. Yeah, because the traditional industries seem to be doing well. So that shows that the market is confident with them. However, tech companies also make a big portion of this market. So we're still going to need more data this week to know how we're going to go. So first things first, we have this huge supply zone resting above the NASDAQ, which will be a good target if you are bullish. And then we have this small imbalance here. So if earnings came in well, then we should expect a bullish scenario where once it passes this imbalance, then now your target can be within this region here. However, at the moment, let's see. Yeah, so at the moment, if the Fed remains hawkish and they say they're going to have another hike by the end of the year, then if the market seems to believe so, then the target now becomes this trend line we've drawn over here. So in that case, if you are to switch to the H4, it becomes more clearer. We have this zone over here, this support zone, that if it breaks, then the next target will be, we need to settle this imbalance and come back to this supply zone. Remember, we were up filling this imbalance at the top that we had marked on the daily. So if we are to be bearish, if it passes this point, then you can look for selling opportunities back here. If not, then the alternative scenario will be looking for a bullish setup to stay within this range until the data is clear next week. Okay. So I think that's what we have for today. We're going to look back at the calendar and see what else is there for announcements. And if you have any questions, you can start typing on the chat, see what else we can look at. In the meantime, we have other announcements on the chart, including unemployment claims coming in on Thursday. And then we have the BOJ, which is very important, this one, on Friday. And the SNB, of course, for Swiss franc. Okay, so that's it for today. It's a short session. Let's see how the market develops. And then from there, we can, but the setups are here. So you can sort of just mark them on your chart, see what's happening, and then assess on your own and evaluate what are the best setups to take and all that. So having said that, if there are no more questions, because there's usually a lag between me talking and the video on YouTube. If there are no more questions, then thanks for attending. See you tomorrow as we cover, there'll be AUD. So we'll be seeing how Australian dollars performed, and then we'll be preparing to see whether this trend has been broken to the lower end. So that is here. So whether this has been broken, this level has passed, or if there is still uncertainty in the market. Oh, lastly, we have gold. I've forgotten to mention this. You're still trending in a. This shows you that there's still a lot of uncertainty. Chances are because of tomorrow, but if we start to see any quick movements in gold, then these are the zones I'll be looking at. So we have this area down here, which I think on the H1 is a sub. Yeah, we had an order block here on H1, and this level up here, and this level up here. So those are the levels we'll be looking at in gold, and let's see how it goes. Okay, so happy peep hunting and enjoy the rest of the day. Oh, and then one more, the other question was looking for a personal trading coach. We have offices in Nairobi, the Nairobi office at Westland, Isili, Kitengela, Nakuru, and me in Eldoret. So you can walk into any of the offices and I think you'll be assisted from there. Okay, so happy trading for the day and see you tomorrow.